Fairy, Deepwood Bounty, Cairn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 1, 2. This is 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12. 14. I only have 14 damage. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. I think it's lethal. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. No, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 7, 10, 13, 15. It's not enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 7, 10, 13, 15. It's really not enough. I'm one turn off. Bro. I play Fairy. I bug alert this. I hope it goes middle. It does not. It goes very far from middle. I play this. Double Cairn. Double Cairn to break through this. Still not good enough. This is 4, 5. Wait, what? 4, 5. Oh wait, I do have lethal. I think. Let me just cast. Oh, I do have lethal. Oh. Oh. Oh my god. Get me out of this godforsaken game. Oh my god. Get me out of this game. Why was that so hard? Beetle map? Yeah.
You wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brantflakes here, back with a new YouTube video. For my 5th return to YouTube, I'm going to be talking about Shadowverse 2 Worlds Beyond. I've been playing a lot of Forests in this game, and I've been having a ton of fun. I guess I say a lot, but you guys can see my profile on the screen. It says C3, which isn't actually that many games compared to a lot of content creators, and I guess just generic gamers at this point. But I'm hoping by showing off my actual profile, I have a bit more, I guess, sway in what I'm talking about. I've been doing a lot more research and studying and watching streams than I have actually been playing. But I hope that the fact that I've essentially gone through the ranks, you can see Ruby was a bit glutted because I had to actually learn the deck in Ruby. But then once something clicked, I just went straight to Diamond. I've been maintaining Diamond pretty decently. I'm slightly positive win rate in Diamond, which is alright considering that I never played Shadowverse 1. So I had to learn the game from quote unquote scratch as an ex-Hearthstone player. But yeah. All that aside, if you guys have any questions or criticisms or anything about the gameplay in the background that'll eventually go on, let me know in the comments. I am more than happy to talk about theory and all that about this game because Forest is so fun, and Forest is the highest skill floor and highest skill cap deck in any card game I've ever played. Although, to be fair, I've played maybe 4 online card games in my life. I've never played Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or, well, Yu-Gi-Oh! I played when I was a child, but that doesn't really count. Or Pokemon, Pokemon Pocket doesn't really count either. So, you know what I mean. This is a very, very difficult deck. I played Hearthstone a lot, and I think the closest deck that you have to this deck is actually Patron Warrior. If you guys played that, not Miracle Rogue. I initially approached this deck with the mindset of Miracle Rogue, and I got my ass kicked. But then I realized when I thought about more in Patron Warrior style, if you guys know what that is, that's when I started realizing, oh, you can do these plays, you do these preparations, and it worked out way better. So it'll make more sense as I continue to talk, and when this video eventually hits 30 minutes, and if you guys have listened to all that, hopefully it'll make sense in the end. But yeah, with all that said, let's go into the cards of the deck. I'm going to try and minimize my talk about a lot of things. I'll try and make future YouTube videos that explain things more thoroughly. So if you guys have questions about certain cards and why they're included, just let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to make a reply or hopefully release a video tomorrow as of posting this video or something on it. But yeah, the deck that I'm personally running right now is going to be running, it's going to be an Arya Roach focused deck. There are a lot of other cards you can play, such as Amataz, you can play Selwyn, you can play Olivia. I don't own Olivia, so that's why I don't have Olivia in the deck. But I guess just as a note, if I were to have Olivia, the 2 cards that I would replace for 2 Olivias would be very specifically Capricious Sprite. I think if you're playing 2 Aryas, every other card in this deck is non-negotiable. But again, that's just up to interpretation. So yeah, you're gonna see that this deck is very heavy on the early cost spells, and I'll talk about why when we get into actual gameplay. But essentially, all the one costs are basically non-negotiable. I think there's an argument for replacing Bug Alert or like one Bug Alert for something else, but that's up to personal preference. Every deck I've seen always runs these 12 one costs, like no matter what, because you need the combo for roaches. For the two costs, I think Lily and Fairy Tamer are the two costs that you need 3 copies of no matter what. I did see someone argue that Lily can be run 2 of, but I disagree because Lily is like really broken, in my opinion. But Faye and Lambert Cairn, you could take these out if you really wanted to, because Faye is mainly really good with Arya because of the raw fairy focus you have, and the Lambert Cairn is pretty important. But you usually only need 2 in any game, and you can even work with just 1. The reason why I have 3 is for the consistency that 3 of a kind brings to a deck. And Cairn is a pretty hard card to learn, in my opinion, so as I got more comfortable with using it, the better I liked 3 of it in my deck. But if you have a really big issue with understanding why there's 3 of Cairn, just keep playing and keep thinking of the applications that it brings, and it might make sense at some point. For 3 costs, 3 killer Roach required. Capricious Sprite and Godwood Staves are kind of the flex cards. Well, I mean, Capricious Sprite is my flex card for sure. And Godwood Staff is in a weird place because, in my opinion, Godwood Staff, across like infinite games, having Godwood Staff will raise your win percentage by a good amount. However, that being said, if you never had Godwood Staff, but you always had perfect draws, Godwood Staff would not be in like your perfect top 15 draw, if that makes sense. So you could take out Godwood Staff, and you could put in like other cards like Amataz or Olivia. Personally, I think that would make your consistency way worse. But again, perfect draw scenario, you never need this card. But it makes your consistency so much better because it is actually a very good card to have because it acts as a second Roach no matter what. It lets you burn your cards for control like very loosely and still have good card generation. So the value of Godwood Staff is super undeniable, but Godwood Staff's value is almost always relevant in like the mid to low roll range, which happens very often. Like you can't always high roll your hand. Glade, 3 of a kind, required. Glade is like one of the strongest cards in the game. No questions asked, in my opinion. Arya, 2 copies because you need the consistency for Arya herself. Obviously, you can still win the game without Arya, but having 1 Arya in your deck or having 1 Arya procced gives your deck a lot more power when it comes to closing out those more difficult games, or even cheesing out a game that can end on like turn 7 or 8 with the fairy charges. And then Bale, definitely 3 required. This card is going to be the reason why you can hit those like 16 plus damage combos with Roach later on. Again, Capricious Sprite is the main 2 flex cards I have for this specific list. You can replace Capricious Sprite with 2 Olivias for better, I guess, like late game control if you want to be able to super evo it for card draw and clears. Or you can replace it with Ruby, the Greedy Whelp or something, I think. I think that's her name. The 2 mana 2/2 that replaces a card in her hand. The reason why Ruby is pretty good in my opinion is because, again, Godwood Staff is not an ideal card to have in your hand. It's not really that ideal, ironically, but it's very, very good for like mid to low roll angles. So that means if you draw 2 or 3 Godwood Staffs, especially early on, it's really, really bad because that second and third Godwood Staff are literally dead in like 95% of your games. I've had a single game where I drew 2 Godwood Staffs early and played them both, and it actually worked out. And that's probably going to be in the background somewhere. Ruby helps you shuffle out that Godwood Staff that you drew for no reason and get an actual good card. And also it helps you shuffle out potentially the second Arya as you play the first one. Because the second Arya is really useless, but the first Arya is very, very good. So those are my recommendations for flex cards if you want to flex out Capricious Sprite. 2 Olivias or 2 Ruby. You can also play stuff like Carbuncle or I guess Perfusion and other things, but I think Capricious Sprite is better than those at least. Looking for lethal is probably one of the hardest things about this deck. I'm going to post a few random screenshots of various lethals that I thought were not necessarily the hardest, but were important to look at because they represent a lot of different ways to kill your opponent. I think there's only 5 screenshots. They range from like pretty easy to like kind of creative, and I'll make sure to opposed to this particular one here, this is my favorite lethal because while there is a very straightforward Roach lethal, there's also a Roachless lethal you can have with just fairies, and that is the exact reason why I ended up playing the double Arya deck instead of the one I was playing before. It's because with Arya, you can get really creative lethals with fairies, and I think that's so sick. Like, I love the fairies in this game. I play on English, so I just hear them go, "Want to play a game? Tag!" And then same time tomorrow. It's really funny to me, so I enjoy playing that. So going into the generic game plan of the deck, you'll see in the background, I'll try and talk about the generic plans, and I'll try and group the crafts into categories to save time on talking about them. But essentially, Forest wants to be aggro. I was talking about the perfect draw for the top 15 cards of your hand, and you'll always want to err on aggro as opposed to combo or control. That means that your main mulligan targets will always be like Good Fairy of the Lake or whatever she's called. It'll always be, Fairy Tamer. Convocation is also pretty good for filling that role, but obviously it's a little worse than Good Fairy because you don't get the body. Fae is really good in that role because Fae buffs up everything. But the issue is that the other 30 cards, or not 30, the other 25 cards in your deck aren't actually that great for aggro. So what ends up happening is that you have to decide whether or not your mulligan or your starting hand before the mulligan is good enough to commit to aggro, or if it looks so bad that you can just full mulligan it and pray for aggro because it's just that bad. So for example, if you open the game, you have Godwood Staff, Bale, Arya, and Glade. I would argue that you can mulligan the entire hand because it's so slow that if your opponent has any amount of early pressure, you would just fold unless you get godly draws. So mulliganing with this deck is honestly half the battle because you have to make the objective decision: is my hand good enough to keep for the early game, or is my hand so bad that if I mulligan it, I guess is my hand so bad that I need to mulligan it all, or how much can I risk mulliganing? Because for example, again, Godwood Staff, really good for your mid rolls. But if you get 2 Godwood Staffs in your opening hand, you just feel like you lost the game unless every draw from the future is good. So you're really, really aiming for those early tempo cards, but I'm still undecided on whether or not it's correct to always mulligan for those tempo cards, or if you want to just play it safe with a Glade maybe occasionally, or a Godwood Staff occasionally. And so during your game, you're always going to want to look for chip damage. That chip damage can come from anywhere between playing your cards quote-unquote inefficiently or making it vulnerable to a board clear in order to get 1 or 2 damage on your enemy's face. This also includes evoing your fairies just to deal 2 extra damage, because that 2 extra damage can be the difference between you winning or losing the game. A lot of your games, if you end up calculating lethal and you're 2 damage off and you have an evo point left and you think about the past rounds and you realize that you could have evoed a fairy to deal 2, that's the exact reason why you lost. And in my opinion, it is almost never wrong to evo to deal 2 damage if your enemy's board is clear. If your enemy has some minions left, then it's a bit more debatable. But if you are on a good turn and you have a swing that you can do, let's say that you have a good fairy left over and you clear the enemy's board with Fairy May, Fairy May, and it's turn 5. I would evo that fairy and just hit their face really hard because that might matter in 2 turns. And if you lose because you don't have an extra 2 damage, that would suck. Going into the middle, around turn 7 is when you want to really start calculating lethal and gauging whether or not you have the cards for lethal. I would honestly argue that you should be checking for lethal progress around turn 4. If your hand does not have, or rather, if you don't have a Godwood Staff active and you don't have roaches in your hand, you should really play control. And you should play to cycle as many cards as you can to get those roaches and maybe go for face. And this includes playing Bales really early for tempo advantage, because those Bales, if you hold them instead of playing them to get an early tempo lead, you might just lose the game way sooner than you should. So from turn 4 onwards, you have to make the objective decision: do I have the fuel in my hand to go for a Roach combo, or should I play a more traditional fair game of Shadowverse and actually control the board and play tempo and force my opponent to respond to what I have while I stall out for my double Roach? And then turn 8 and beyond, if you still don't have double Roach in your hand, pray. Turn 80 Beyond not having double roach is like the top reason why Olivia is so good in Forest, because it gives you a lot more generation, it gives you really high tempo value, and it's really just, yeah, again, why people like Olivia so much. You will have games where you low roll as Forest. It sucks, but that'll just happen. Now, going into the actual matchups, I will say that the generic groupings you can make are going to be probably, I would say, Portal, Rune, Sword, and Forest are all going to have the exact same conceptual gameplay that you will need to have, and Dragon, I guess, for the most part. So out of the 7 crafts, those 5, again, Forest, Sword, Rune, Portal, Dragon, these 5 crafts, you'd rather always have early presence than not have early presence. And that means cycling out Gauntlet Staff because you need to do more damage to their face or have a better board presence. Because all these crafts really enjoy either having good board presence early or really enjoy you not having good pressure at the start. So Runecraft, for example, a lot of my Runecraft wins are just straight up when they play nothing, like they just draw like 7 cards, turns 1 through 4, and then sometimes they just miss Anagrea on turn 5 and they FF. Or they play like 1 or 2 minions that you just easily clear, and then they play Anagrea and clear Anagrea and deal like another 3 to face. And then they miss their second Anagrea and they play Kuon and you just kill them through Kuon. Or they play double Anagrea and they play Kuon, but because their first 4 turns were empty, you're still going to kill them because they're in range of double Roach. So same idea with or I guess not the same idea, but the same tempo logic applies to Forest, Dragon, Sword, and Portal as well. Because instead of going for their face like you would in Runecraft, you're going to be trying to clear the board and maintain a clean board or even a tempo advantage on the board against these other 4 classes. Portalcraft is by far, in my opinion, the hardest matchup for Forest because Portal's early minions all chomp fairies for breakfast, and they have very good board clear and sustain and all this other stuff. But because it's a card game and you can't have perfect draw every time, Portals, like, even their high roll, if you have an appropriate high roll to match their high roll, it's dealable. But even their mid roll lower, like, they will have missing cards that they need to actually deal with you, and because they miss those cards, it'll allow you to deal damage to them, and eventually you might get enough damage to eke out like a random 16 HP burst at turn 9 because they couldn't kill you in time, which happens a lot more than you think, because Portal doesn't actually have many taunts unless they spam the 1/5s, but they spam the 1/5s, then their Gundam is a little weaker, unless, again, they super high roll. And Puppet Portalcraft is the same thing, where Puppet Portalcraft, I guess Puppet Portalcraft and Sword are very similar, where you basically play cards knowing they're going to be cleared, but you have to play the cards because it's a card game and you need to have that interaction happen to progress the game. So, like, let's say that the Portalcraft player has they have 5 puppets in hand. You're still going to play your 5 fairies into them because you just need to, like, it's required. And so while it's annoying to have everything cleared, you have to do that because it's really hard to beat Puppet Portalcraft once they hit turn 8 and 10 unless you have chip damage on them. Like, they play Orcus into Liam. You're just boned if you didn't get good tempo at some point. You're just hoping that when you play your tempo, that they low rolled somehow and can't match you like pound for pound. Swordcraft, very similar idea. You have to match them on the board, and because Swordcraft doesn't have any real healing, that means they only have taunts or wards, and wards are very easy to deal with as Forest because of your bales slapping the wards through the dirt. So you want to make sure you have chip damage, you want to make sure you have board presence, because Swordcraft only has Apollo really for board clears, or for like mass AoE board clears. So if you get the tempo advantage, it's really hard for Sword to catch back up. Or on the other hand, it's a lot easier to deal with Sword's board spam when you have tempo advantage, because you're allowed to trade into those minions with existing minions, and you won't be as overwhelmed by Sword in the long run. Forest, oh no, Dragoncraft's the same idea, by the way. Like, Dragoncraft, you can't really know if it's aggro or ram when you mulligan, so you always mulligan assuming it's aggro, because like Runecraft, Ram Dragoncraft can have a lot of empty turns early on, so you just murder them early. But the mulligan for dealing with aggro and dealing with late game scalers is almost the exact same in the long run. Forestcraft, the mirror is really messy, but you want to do the exact same thing. Play early, play aggro early, hope you draw double roach before they do. kill them with double roach at some point. It's a very volatile matchup because if you low roll and they high roll, you're just dead no matter what. But if you guys have equal like quality rolls, it's a really fun dynamic matchup because it's all about who can figure out a way to sneak in the roach hits sooner and more efficiently, or who's like done the risk reward analysis of letting a few fairies live so that they can get a roach turn in first. Abyss and Haven are going to be a bit of a departure past those 5 crafts, because I think against Abyss and Haven, you can actually keep Godwood Staff early, or even have 2, because those 2 crafts do end up being a lot more grindy than the other 5. Now, if you get a perfect tempo opener and they don't have a good opener, it's going to be the exact same story. You just beat the crap out of them and they die. But if they draw well, they actually don't have the greatest pressure when it comes to killing you. Obviously, Abysscraft has Cerberus, which will kind of deal a lot of damage when they do the ult Evo shenanigans, but it's not as consistent, and it isn't nearly as scary as like mass, what's her name, Orbis. I like say her name so much that I'm suddenly blanking out on it, but like they don't have the scariest late game essentially. So you can greed out, and also Abyss and Haven have a lot of healing and taunts. So you actually do end up going pretty late with them, which means that you can cycle through your deck a lot more than you can than the other crafts on average. So Abyss, the early game is pretty good, but it's not really scary from a pure base damage perspective as the other crafts are, and you can deal with their minions pretty easily. And then as you keep going along, you'll eventually grind them out and pop them. Same with Havencraft. If they draw extremely well, you'll feel like they're impossible to beat. But if they don't draw perfectly, it'll just be like the game of like, oh, how many responses do you have to my proactive plays? How many ways can I get you low before you heal all the way back up? And if you don't manage to heal all the way back up, how can I engineer my hand to give myself the 16 damage roach combo that I need to kill you? So yeah. I'll explain more of the matchups in detail as I get more footage, but as you can see by my RP earlier, I don't really spam many games, I just study and research from streams. So, yeah, Forestcraft definitely tickles a part of my brain that makes me very happy. So, if you guys have any questions, please, again, ask me any criticism about my gameplay or whatnot, just let me know in the comments below. I love studying this deck, and the only reason why I'm not playing more is because there's a massive heat wave in the city right now, so I'm just melting my chair. And since Forest requires so much brain power, I don't trust myself to stream and play while it's like 85 degrees in my room because I'm too stupid to have AC. So yeah, I'll try and post more videos tomorrow. I'll try and do a really detailed look through the Forest cards and post them, again, hopefully by tomorrow. Today, this video is probably going to be posted on the 25th, so 26th, 27th, hopefully we'll have the card video. And then I'll make like a crappy tier list video for engagement or something. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I really love this game. Hope you guys enjoy Forestcraft, and I hope this helps out a little bit if you're trying to learn it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye bye.